that's where I found out that how much process is important, because even though there was a lot of manual work and a lot of people on the floor, there was clear processes, there were clear instructions, there was a lot of clarity on how to do it.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process.
Welcome to another episode of Process Pioneers. Today I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Shugufa Azimi. She is the Process Improvement and Quality Manager at ASOP, a large organisation here in Australia. Shugufa, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. It's great to be part of your process improvement.
That's great. So to begin with, what I might actually do is I've given you a very brief introduction there, but I think what our audience would really love to hear is to get a bit more of a grid or a framework for your background and experience in the whole BPM world. So maybe if you wanted to start with, I guess, where that interest for process management first began, and then a brief timeline or history leading up to where we are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I've actually started as a quality person in food industry, and that's where my interest started. I've been very lucky in a sense that I have worked in a small organization, globally large organization, as well as medium organization. And just going through that space, it just highlighted how much process is being valuable, and how much difference it makes when an organization have it once versus people who don't have it. So it has been really wonderful, and that's where my interest began. And through that, I started working when I was at General Mills, which is a global organization, by traveling around to different factories in US, Canada, and also New Zealand. I just learned, okay, this is such a great space, and how you can transfer the knowledge from one factory to another and make it better through process improvement, even though I was in quality space. And through that, I learned a lot in doing that. And then I got to work a lot at ESOP, because they, like you mentioned, it's a large organization, but they started very small. So that journey of moving from small to a large, just so much emphasized the need for process, because they started as being small business, doing things easily, but now that they're large, how much processes are important and how much it adds value to have them. So that's really my journey, and I'm hoping to continue on this space moving forward as well.
That's great to hear. I think obviously we're going to have a range of people listening to this, but to be able to listen to someone that has, I guess, journeyed with an organisation from a small organisation to a large organisation, that's certainly going to be, there's going to be a lot of value, I can already tell from our conversation that we're going to have.
Oh, that's great to hear, yeah. And they're definitely a great journey to be part of.
That's great. So when you were traveling around to the different factories, talk to me a little bit about, I guess, were you doing more work in like more discovery sessions, looking at the quality of processes or quality checks, or was it more, did you find yourself working in front of like a BPM software or solution to model and map out processes?
Actually, great question. But we started doing mapping out, because at General Mills, I was part of the project to implement some label management. And because of that, I get to travel. And we did a little bit of both. We sat down in front of computer, but then we realized it actually adds a lot of value if we actually go and see how they're doing, because to translate what actually happens on the floor to the system, we found it's much valuable if we do a bit of a both. So in that journey, I kind of did both. I went to the factories, learn what they're doing, what's not working, what's working really well as well, and then capture those and bring it to make it a little bit standardized for all the factories we had around the globe. So, and also part of that journey, I realized one factories are doing great and some aren't doing so great. And then getting that knowledge from one that is doing so great and transferring it to the other was really helpful. So I find it benefits both ways, that you do it on the system as well as actually go and learn and see actually what's happening on the floor and how people are doing things day to day.
Right, right. And did you find that there were any sort of challenges, any challenges that arose when trying to understand the factory's processes or what was being done? Did you find that depending on the person or the type of person you were talking with, there was an easier way to, I guess, accomplish that task?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and also cultural differences, I found that's quite different. Like having the same communication to India versus having similar communication to Australia is a completely different thing. So I really enjoyed learning the cultural differences as well and how to communicate those processes that make sense to the people on the factory floor as well as on the office as well. So one of the biggest challenges probably was the cultural difference for me, learning that people work differently. It's valuable. They all add great values, but you just have to be mindful of those differences, because when it comes to process improvement, even though the policy and procedure may say the same thing, but how you convey it may be received differently. So I did a lot of work in that space, and I learned that if in India, for example, it's a little bit more easier if you spend a little bit more time and have a bit of a hands-on, versus in Australia. I feel like we can sometimes do it pretty easily by just communicating over email or just having a different ways of conversing those things. So that was really the biggest thing for me, and we came out of it pretty good. And also I came out of it pretty good, understanding all those differences and taking it with me through my career as a journey. Yeah.
Great, great. And when you were working with the different factories, and you mentioned before that some factories were, I guess, operating more efficiently than other factories, how difficult was that process, or what was that experience like, or maybe some of the challenges that came up when, I guess, trying to take the processes that one factory was what we're implementing and trying to implement that in another factory?
One of the biggest thing, as an example, is one of the factories were very manual. We had a lot of people on the floor doing the work versus another factory that was completely automated. Even though the factory was fully automated, after reviewing the data and the performance, it showed that the factory that had a lot of manual work, a lot of people on the floor, were doing much better versus an automated. And that's where I found out that how much process is important, because even though there was a lot of manual work and a lot of people on the floor, there was clear processes, there were clear instructions, there was a lot of clarity on how to do it, who needs to do it, and what we need to do. And that created a lot of efficiency and great work. Where in the factory that was fully automated, because the reliance was on automation, people forgot to put clear processes around what we need to do, who need to do it, if something goes wrong, what we need to do. And that kind of create a little bit of not so efficient, if this is the right word. So it's really great to learn those things and go across and have an open mind, and not necessarily what you believe is good is actually really good. So it was a really great journey to understand those differences, that sometimes even though you're automated, you still need a lot of great processes in order to make sure you work efficiently and perform really well as well.
Yeah, right. And I guess that clarity is really important when people are all working together, but I guess especially even more so in the current climate that we're going through. Obviously, there are some organisations out there that, when I talk about the current climate, for those that are listening, we're talking about the COVID-19, the coronavirus, I guess, season that we're going through at the moment. And it's really disrupting a lot of organisations and industries. Some organisations have been wiped out altogether. Some organisations are thriving currently because it's playing to their advantage. And then a lot of organisations in general are just struggling. But talk to me a little bit about how, and I'm not sure what it's like at ASOP, or whether you could talk to, I guess, how BPM plays a vital or important part in today's climate, especially when most organisations have been forced for all of their employees to work from their own home offices.
I think I can talk generally. Just I've been involved in a few companies and also a few organizations that I'm working with. And you're spot on. The clarity is such an important piece, and that's why the clear processes play such a great role right now. Because people who have been able to have those things, they've made a transition quite quickly from working from home versus those who don't have it. They have to obviously put a bit of a work up front before they move to that. And also, if they have moved, there's a little bit of a lack of understanding who needs to do that and how we need to do it. And they have to start working on that first before they start doing the actual work. So it just, especially in this kind of climate, it's such an important piece that we have clear processes, clarity on what we need to do, how we need to do it, and who needs to do it. So it creates more efficiency, but also allows people to work from wherever they are, whether they're in the office, whether they're at home. It just helps them out a lot.
That's good. That's good. And let's just say there's someone listening right now that they're part of an organization that doesn't necessarily have a very mature BPM framework or focus. And but they're listening to you and they're thinking that, like, yes, our organization has a long way to go in managing and documenting and improving our processes. But let's I guess let's start with a definition of what is BPM. Obviously, there are a lot of descriptions out there and definitions and takes on it. But I think it'd be good for the audience to hear from you. When I say BPM, what does that mean to you?
No, I love that question because it's I just don't want people, and I have been part of that experience as well. And I just want people to encourage they don't need to document everything to the T. They don't need to create such a difficult processes to create processes. So even though if you're at the young company, even you're at the start of the journey, you can start slowly. We can create simple flowcharts to document your processes. You can create simple things to clarify what you're doing. Just I cannot emphasize enough, the simpler it is, the better it is, because I think a lot of people, that's why they get discouraged to go through this journey, especially small organization, because they think, oh, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of documentation, how do we do it? I really encourage people to look at it as a simple process. And like I said, even a simple flowchart can clarify a very difficult process that is happening currently in an organization, or a simple table can do it. I think if they start with that, they can actually make it slowly to make continuously improve on it and add on it. And that's the whole part of process improvement journey, is start as small as you can, make it big as you get time, because that is the journey of continuous improvement. You don't have to start perfectly. You don't have to start with big tools or big things to have on site. So that's how I see like continuous improvement. And I hope everybody starts on it wherever they are and how small or big they are.
Great. And I think it comes natural to a certain type of person, I would say, someone with more of a process-centric mindset or way of looking at things.
Absolutely, I agree. It definitely comes with that, but people can be taught. I believe in that. I think if you have people to work with your organization and with individuals, you can start the journey wherever you are. And there's so many amazing people around that people can ask for help, and I'm sure everybody can help in that space. Yeah.
That's great. And so obviously when I guess embarking on a BPM exercise or project, you obviously need to get buy-in from that top level, that senior management, that CXO level. How would someone go about, I guess, presenting the idea to senior management in a way that they're talking their language? They're talking about the things that are important to senior management, so that it's much easier to get that buy-in from them.
Like I think it's the way you need to go at it. Again, I believe in simplicity of the processes, and that really helps people to do it more easily and adopt quickly. So I feel for me to approach to the leadership or the higher team is really go with what value it adds as a holistic business. I think if
Right.
people see the value in it, then they will buy into it. If they don't see the value in it, and they won't buy into it. And also one of the things, and this is really from experience, is I cannot emphasize enough, it's okay to start small, because most people, when you go to the leadership team, you get discouraged because they're like, we don't have the resources, we don't have the time, we don't have the money, how are we going to do this? Which is fair, especially if businesses are going through so many things. It's hard to sometimes allocate resources for process improvement or business processes. So it's really important as a process improvement person to go and show the value, but also the simplicity of it, that if you start simple and if you start align with your company's goals and objectives, it's an easy sell to do, but also it's fit for purpose. If your company, just because it's process improvement, but if it's not fit for purpose for your company, it's okay not to include it. Just make it custom made for your organization, but value it adds for your space, and also how easily and simplicity you can create in that space. I think that really brings it home for a lot of leadership team to make sure they actually can see value, but also they don't have to add a lot of resources to it.
Yes, yeah. So obviously, it's very important to get that buy-in from that CXO level. But I would also say that there needs to be some sort of buy-in from enterprise-wide. You know, like the people that are actually going to be carrying out the processes, and they're going to be the right ones to notice the continuous areas for improvement. And I know in a number of the different conversations I've been having with different people, I guess there are different ways to try and make business process attractive to those that don't automatically find it attractive. They try and make business process champions. They try to make, I know some organizations have some sort of like superhero, sort of like they're trying to make it sexy, you know, and how would you, I'm not sure of what your experience is with ASOP, but have you found that same challenge of trying to get enterprise-wide adoption? And if so, how do you navigate that, and how do you get people to actually value the process work?
I think that's a great point you raised. It is different. It's not just the CEOs and COXs that you need to get the buy-in. It's the cross-functional team. It's the holistic business. And yes, look, if anybody says they never get a pushback, that they're pretty lucky in process improvement space. You always push back in that space. And the way I have approached it is really collaboration. I think some of the mistakes sometimes people do is they create the process without understanding what that space is. So they introduce a process and gave it to people and say, go with it and make it happen. And sometimes those processes created difficulties and conflicts in that team of work or in that space of work. And that's where it's important that you create collaborative environment where you actually understand what they do, what's not working, and what's working well, because then you can combine those things that's working well or take the benefit from those things that's working well and create the processes and add value on the space that's not working well. And that has worked really well for me to have that space of understanding and really working collaboratively with cross-functional team, because obviously I cannot be expert in all fields. It's great to know what the points are and where the really difficulties are, and then add value in that space rather than going with a set standard of saying this is what the process improvements are, just go with it. Sometimes you just get a little bit of a pushback.
Mm-hmm. Now you mentioned cross-functional there. I think that's obviously one of the biggest value that BPM can provide is not looking at an organization from that sort of hierarchy or org chart view, but looking at it from that cross-functional view. But obviously it's not a small task to do that. You know, if it's not a small task for a large organization to flick a switch and go from not having that cross-functional view to having that cross-functional view. But I guess what would you, I guess the question that CXOs would have is it worth it? Is it worth it making that transition? And if so, what are the best steps to take when embarking on that journey? And I know you've already mentioned, like, keep it simple. I guess don't bite off more than you can chew, but maybe you can talk to us a little bit more about that.
No, that's a good point. Just to add on to that, yes, as a continuation of how we can cross it, because I think the steps of how the process are going to be simple and really step by step, but also from a people point of view, because that is the important piece when it comes to process improvement, is really create a cross-functional work space for everybody. And it's a great journey, especially if you're going a process improvement journey, to start with that space, even though if your organization doesn't have it, it's a good space. I think what I recommend is, which I have done and has worked really well, is create champions in each space. So
right.
The way I've gone about it is, okay, we have a champion for process improvement in purchasing area, we have a champion of process improvement in logistic area, and work with those champions and work through them to those teams, because sometimes it's easier to have the language correct, and they who work in those spaces, they can speak the language, so you can work through them. And that really works well, because not only that they are involved, but they're also involved in the decision making of process improvement, and they feel kind of okay, it is their voice that's making the changes, not it's coming from process improvement.
Yes.
So I think that's where a collaboration can start, and I highly recommend that if you have somebody in your department, get somebody that you know that they work well with the process, but they also have an understanding of that space. Then that way you can create and then filter it down to everybody. And also, I cannot emphasize enough, it doesn't have to be the management, the team in that space. You can choose somebody who actually can speak process improvement, but also have a connection with their team, so they can go back and talk about all those things within their team.
Great. And obviously, when we're talking about process optimization or process improvement, we mentioned earlier that you can make those incremental changes, those small changes, the changes, I guess, that the people that are conducting the processes, they probably have the best view on that. What are the small things that we can improve on a day-to-day basis to continuously improve this process or the way we do this task? And then you've obviously got radical innovation, where you get a team together on a project level or whatever it looks like, and you look at a process that might take 14 days and cut it down to 2 days or 2 hours. But talk to us a bit about, I guess, the difference between the incremental process improvement and the radical innovation, and how they both play a part in the BPM journey, I guess.
I think that's a great space to touch on, because a lot of, from my experience at least, a lot of organizations wait for that radical innovation to things happen. And because of that, people stop doing things. They forget about this continuous improvement on day-to-day work. It could be as simple as like, hey, okay, let's create an Excel sheet to record everything, versus not having anything and everybody having it in their head. So it can be simple task of okay, why we are doing something the way we are doing, asking those questions. Is it efficient? Is it not efficient? How I can do it better? Those simple things can be asked every day on simple tasks. Even having a phone call, you can ask, okay, is this phone call adds value? Can I do it in a better way? Or can I do it in a group? Because sometimes we call so many different people. It's like, okay, can I call everybody in one go and make it more efficient? So I think we really have to encourage those small ones, because we don't want to encourage people to not have that and wait for that radical innovation. But sometimes we do need that radical innovation as well. And I love that, because it just changes people around and make sure the organization goes in the right direction. And a great example is this time that we have to come with some radical transformation for organizations, for people, for everybody. And it's important to have that. And it has helped, because I can see a lot of organizations have changed working from home, adopting those process changes, having conversation over the Skype or Zoom, or instead of being in the office. So as a process improvement, it's important important to have those processes aligned as well in a radical way, but also I'm very much also very supportive of small ones that needs to happen every day as we do a small task or big tasks.
Great,
I hope
great.
that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. And obviously being not only a process improvement manager, but also a quality manager, talk to us about how, I guess, BPM and quality management, how they work hand in hand.
I cannot emphasize enough how much they work hand in hand, because obviously the quality of a service, a product is really depending on how your consumers receive you and how you do well as a business. And having, and I don't know about others, but most of the organizations have a bit of a quality is really process driven. They're very strict on things, and that has worked really well for me because I've been able to create simple processes to make quality more approachable for everybody, because sometimes quality can be seen as, okay, they're places and they're checking things and they're not letting us do this or that, but combining that processes with the quality has helped in a sense that, okay, through processes we can communicate what quality means and how we can do it, and also creating simple processes for the tasks that sometimes could be a little bit mundane for others who don't work in quality, to make it really simple and also understandable in their space to know why quality is so important and how we can do it. Also processes, if you have good processes, you have good quality. So really creating those processes that makes how you do things and when you do things. And if you have that, then you don't have to focus a lot on how good your quality is, because your processes takes you to that end result of good quality product or good quality service.
Great, great. And for someone listening right now that they might be part of an organisation that doesn't have a very mature BPM framework or focus, and they like what you're saying. When the stuff that we've been talking about, they're like, yes, our organisation has a long way to go in the documentation and the improvement in our business processes. What direction would you point that person in if they, obviously today we can only fit so much in a 30-minute interview or conversation, but I guess for those that want to go on to do further learning and research and try and add some of these, the things that you've been talking about to their organisation, what sort of direction would you point them in? Yeah.
I think the first thing is look at your space first. I think don't look at the overall organization. I think that's where people get a little bit like stopped, or they get a little bit pushback because they look as a whole thing, and it like I cannot emphasize it. It just sometimes looks too big or not valued at enough. I really encourage everybody who feels that way. Start with your space. Your space. Look at what you can improve in your space, what you can change in your space. And even though I know I hear this a lot, I don't have time to do it, and I'm gonna sound, but it's okay if you don't have time to do it, because anything that you do that you feel like taking a lot of your time, that is the space you should start. Like, just challenging that space. Okay, why even I'm spending this much time, and how I can improve this to get some time and make other things in my space better. So start from your own space. You don't have to go big, and once you fix the area you're around and put processes that helps you around, then you're in a better space to help others as well and create that process improvement in your own organization.
That's great. That's great. Now, guys, everyone that's listening right now, obviously we've only, I say this in every interview because 30 minutes, you can only fit so much in. And so we're only scraping the surface here on a number of different topics. But when we get to release this interview, I encourage you to take out that notepad, to jot some notes down, and even to add some comments, add any questions that you might have in the comments section below, whether this is on YouTube or LinkedIn or wherever you're watching or listening to this. because I think there are people like Shugufa who have a background in this space, and I'm sure they would be more than happy to engage with you on this and to help you along the journey, obviously depending on the organisation and the challenges that you're facing. But there is a great BPM community, and I obviously have the privilege of interviewing a few of them, and so please don't hesitate to reach out and get in touch. But Shugufa, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege.
Thank you so much. Likewise, it has been an absolute pleasure to have a chat with you, and it's a great space that you have started. So I'm looking forward to seeing more from you.